video will be dealing with the Papacy Perpetuated. Before I get into it, though, I would like to thank Fama for the endless work she did in bringing a lot of this stuff together for me. Being Bob helped me with a good bit of the material as well. I would like to thank him and the work that they did, especially Fama, who stayed up some nights beyond the hours I stayed up looking and tracing down some of this material. When you get to dealing with thousands of pages of writings, and remember, a lot of these manuscripts then were written in the Greek and had to be translated into the English language. And when you get into those thousands of pages, you find some writings that you would just love to use, but once you trace them down, you find out they have no value to you at all because they had disinformation in them. And that's one of the biggest problems you run into is disinformation. And be sure you track a lot of this material down. The biggest work I used in here was Eusebius' Ecclesiastical History as one of the books that had many writings in it. Another one would be Ecclesiastical History of Eusebius by Reverend C.C. Cruz, who did a great job on it. Both of those materials can be found on the internet, and again, you have to trace through them to be sure you're getting the right quotes and be sure that you're not getting something that is of no value to you and would add nothing to the video, but add nothing more than confusion. Especially during the early church fathers, when you had a lot of persecution going on at the time of Peter, on through that age there, you had tremendous persecution going on. There was even times when the popes themselves were killed or beheaded or whatever. A lot of other bishops, a lot of other Christians as well. And at the time you were getting a lot of disinformation too as to what was actually going on. Sometimes churches outside of Rome may be in persecution or not knowing what to do or not knowing what is actually taking place in the church, and this is mainly due to a lack of communication. But in reading these books, you'll find out that once some form of communication was restored and some kind of order could be gained throughout all this persecution, the Church of Rome would step up and send them letters or papers, whatever it may be, encouraging them and letting them know that the church still stands and the papacy is still intact and is continuing to that day, again through much persecution. And as I get into the second half of this video, you will see more of how you even had anti-popes rising up then, especially during the time of Stephen. And Stephen and his predecessor had to deal with a tremendous amount of turmoil and disinformation that was being put out at that time. Cyprian writes a lot about that in some 78, 79 letters that he wrote. And he was being one place, and he was getting information from Rome, and all of a sudden here comes these anti-popes arising. And they were trying to get this information back and forth to each other to know who the real pope was at that time because of this disinformation and even forgery that was being put out by other people. But shortly before Stephen, one of the anti-popes had ordained a lot of bishops, and those bishops had baptized hundreds of people. And Cyprian was against these people coming back into the church when during the time of Stephen they wanted to come back into the church. Cyprian's argument was that if we'll allow them back into the church, but they had to be rebaptized. And a lot of the bishops went along with Cyprian on this, but they called on Stephen to settle the argument. And they submitted to Stephen's decision that no, these people can come back into the church and they do not have to be rebaptized, which I think was a very wise decision he made then. If a person has a valid baptism, there is no need to rebaptize that person. You just bring them back into the church, confirm them back into the church without rebaptizing them. For instance, in my own case, I had a valid baptism before entering into the Catholic Church, so I didn't have to be rebaptized. I was just confirmed into the Catholic Church. But yet at the time that these other bishops were calling for people to be rebaptized to come back into the church, Stephen said, no, it's not going to happen, and they submitted to his authority on that. With all that said, I'm going to end this video now, and the purpose of this video was not to go over everything every pope had ever done, but simply to show that the papacy was perpetuated, or that it did continue on and did continue in apostolic succession. I felt that I've shown that amply in this video, where there was a perpetuation of the papacy, and it did follow order. There's so many things out there you could put in here. Hopefully this will meet the requirements that Albert's looking for, and I'm sure there'll be some things I can pick up on in his videos that may be able to help me in my concluding video after he is through. Again, remember, that there's so much disinformation out there. You have to carefully weed through this to be sure that you're getting the right quotes, and that they are accurate, and that many times hopefully you can find them in more than one place. And to weed through all this material takes a lot of time, and I appreciate Albert being patient with this and extending me the time on it. And rest assured, Albert, that any time you need, feel free to take it. If something happens that you happen to delay in your videos, don't worry about it. I understand it. Just again, take your time as you've allowed me to do mine, and hopefully through this we can come to some understanding of our different faiths and where we come from and what we believe and how we arrive at it. And hopefully the viewers can see the same thing. Again, thank you very much, Albert, for this opportunity. And if this video has satisfied your requirements, maybe you can send me an email and let me know, or somehow let me know. And if not, I can make another one. But again, my main concern here was to show that the papacy was indeed perpetuated, that it just simply didn't end, and that there was decisions being made by the Pope. And hopefully I've shown that to the people. So again, thank you, and until next time, this has been Godly Saying. God bless.